Hey summoners, make sure that you're subscribed to the Mobalytics YouTube channel and hit that bell button, that way you're always up to date and part of our notification squad. Hello summoners and welcome back to Mobalytics, where today we have the preseason patch 8.23 season 9 video tier list. As you saw in the awesome intro sequence, make sure you check out the product at mobalytics.gg. We have a brand new summoner profile, which is the best and most comprehensive way to check out all of your data, all of your stats, all of your matches. It is the best all-in-one platform for you to get better at League of Legends, and check that out. So make sure you do that using the link in the description down below. Anyway, quickly, let's go over a change that Riot did make. There was, in fact, a hotfix for Dark Harvest already. So that rune was being taken by pretty much everybody, and it has become the best rune in the preseason so far. We still do think it's really good. It's good on Assassins, it's good on Poke Mages, it's especially good on Karthus. However, just keep in mind that that actually was hotfixed. Anyway, let's get into the tier list. Starting off as always in the top lane, Victor Top has become better due to the buffs to Kleptomancy, Jax, Rengar, and actually Pyke in there. We will get to Pyke when it comes to mid lane, so don't worry about that, he will get an explanation. As far as the rest of the pool, there are a lot of mages being good right now. Riven has gotten a lot better as well with the runes, so let's talk about Riven really quick and then we'll jump back to Rengar. The reason that Riven has gotten better for low elo and is still the same S tier in high elo is because the rune changes and the stat adjustments are much better for her. Riven is a champion that technically needed to always take Transcendence and was forcing herself into the sorcery tree, but now that they're scaling CDR, you can actually take pretty much what you want. Riven always wanted to get attack damage, but now that means that you could go something like Inspiration into Resolve and still take your AD and your CDR. That's a huge change for her and allows her to be more specific about the runes that she wants, and it kind of reminds me of Dopa's Twisted Fate. If you've ever seen Dopa play TF, every single game he changes his runes. Every single time, it's just always a new page, new page, new page. I think Riven can do that sort of thing as well, so if you know what you're doing in terms of building her and in terms of the runes, she is a fantastic champion now. Rengar Top is very similar in this boat, being able to take Fleet Footwork, Grasp of the Undying, Electrocute, Dark Harvest, Kleptomancy. All these things are good for Rengar top lane, and because he can just go AD armor, he's impossible to lane against. Actually impossible to lane against if the Rengar knows what he's doing, so that's why you see him in S tier even for lower elos. But of course, higher and higher you go, you're going to get better at Rengar, and because he's also a good jungler, this means his time investment is very worth it. For high elo top lane, bruisers are going to be much stronger this season, but don't discredit tanks just yet. So much of this reason has to do with the rune stats as well. Imagine a Renekton who gets to take attack damage, and armor, while still getting to go Conqueror or press the attack into the resolve path. How do you really deal with that? Beforehand, Conqueror into Resolve would give you attack speed and health on Renekton, which is not at all what you want, but now having AD armor, but still getting to take the exact page you want, is so much of the reason champions like Riven, Renekton, Fiora are going to be awesome. AP tanks such as Maokai, Gragas, and Galio also got better because now you can go AP, and armor, and still take Aftershock, not limiting yourself to bad early game for damage and wave clear. You can take the rune that you're really looking for. Okay, moving on to the jungle tier list. This one is somewhat of a shot in the dark. We will have to see how Dark Harvest affects the future. Maybe Shaco for the next 3 months is just going to be the best jungler in the game. Things like Jax are still good, and Amumu is still surprisingly good as well. With champions such as Amumu and Rammus, now you get to take double armor into attack speed, which helps out your clear so much, so much. Rammus can start the game with 46 armor, which is insane now. Tank junglers, again similar to those AP tanks, will want to take either Aftershock or whatever they're looking for, but then they can still take the runes that they want and not force themselves to take a bad rune set. Really, tank junglers from the previous season, even champions like Sejuani, if you saw before, would take things like Fleet Footwork or Lethal Tempo just so they can go down the precision tree to get the attack speed. But being able to take attack speed in a minor rune means that it opens up so many possibilities for junglers, and the champion before like Sejuani, who would never ever go resolve into sorcery because you would get no attack speed, now could do that. For the rest of the jungle pool, carries are still pretty good. Graves, Kha'Zix, Kayn, Vi, stuff like that, they still will be pretty good. One thing to note is that the jungle experience was tuned down later on into the game, so it's unlikely that Graves will be level 17 when everybody else is level 6, so that's a small change and it's not too much of a massive XP change. He's still going to be really good, but certain situations like that will come up less, which overall will lower their power compared to things like Shyvana, Amumu, Rammus, stuff like that. Onto the high elo jungle list, Rammus actually does move his way into S tier. This is again similar to what we were talking about. You would think Rammus would be better in lower elo, but the reason for him being good in high elo is the high elo players are going to do a great job of taking the turret plating, of playing around objectives, pushing and sieging. So Rammus's massive early game around level 5 to level 10, where you just spam ganks with either Predator or Aftershock in your Powerball, this kind of playstyle will be heavily rewarded at high elo, whereas in lower elos, yes, Rammus does scale, but ultimately these games go 40 to 50 minutes, so your ganking doesn't matter as much. Champions like Rengar, Camille, Kha'Zix, and Shaco carrying the games in high elo are disgusting, especially with Dark Harvest. Lee Sin is pretty good, Kayn and Kindred are pretty good, and you do see a bit of Nunu and Willem coming back as well. That champion has been pushing their way up and up with buffs they've received here and there. I actually think Nunu is pretty good, so give him a try. On to the mid lane, where we have Katarina being my first pick of the week here. We also have Adam's pick of the week in Zyra mid in A tier. We have Pyke mid, which we'll get to in a sec. Anivia, Zillion, Vel'Koz, tons of mages. We even have Pobelter in there at the bottom. I mean, we got a lot of different things here, and there are a ton of mages filling this up. Part of the reason that some of these mages are so good, examples being like Brand, is because you now get to take 20 AP at level 1. This means while it's true that you can now take upwards of 12 MR on a lot of these champions, imagine you're laning against an Ahri who goes AP, CDR, and magic resistance, but you're Brand with 20 AP, you're just gonna hit like a truck. There's no way for them to truly deal with you here. So a lot of the mages have become incredibly strong due to the rune changes. Champions like Karthus, Lux, Vel'Koz just absolutely demolish the laning phase. As for Katarina, she is going to be my pick of the week, and well, it's preseason, which means that Katarina is S tier. Kat will always be able to thrive in the chaos of solo queue, and during this time is when the games are the most chaotic by far. On top of that, her laning phase did get a bit better and has a bigger cushion, allowing her to take defensive stat runes to survive lane, and speaking of runes, she also gets to take the new hotness. Dark Harvest is a perfect rune for Katarina, allowing her to get extra resets, and of course the more kills she gets, the stronger she gets, which sounds pretty good for a snowballing roaming assassin. Roam around the map, stack up your Dark Harvest, and watch your enemies spam ping their mid, asking where is the Mia ping. As for your secondary page, now that you're not locked into taking attack speed from the precision path, this is perfect for her. Now you can take Triumph on her and not waste any runes whatsoever. Pyke mid is a follow-up from our previous pick of the week, and the reason that this is so good is because of the changes that Riot gave to his lethality scaling, and it's so hard to deal with. This champion does so much damage, you barely even need to hit your stun, and you'll probably still be able to all-in them. You can go as aggressive as taking water walking into mobility boots, run around the map, and kill people. And in this meta where it's impossible for the enemy player to instantly take your tower on one push, although they will be able to knock off some plates and get some turret plates, it also means that you're not as heavily punished for roaming as well. It's something that a lot of people aren't considering at the moment. As for Adam's pick of the week in Zyra mid lane, this is something that has constantly been pushed more and more as time has gone on, and finally we think it's good enough to recommend. If you know anything about this champ or you've seen Zyra mid before, you would know why this is here. This thing does damage, and I mean some serious damage. For Zyra, she is a mobile and very squishy, but the one thing that she has going for her is typically if you get ganked, you can at least trade 1 for 1 if you're able to hit your skill shots due to your 1 rotation hitting like a truck. She also does help push the lane and has fantastic wave clear, which will help her knock off a couple turret plates here and there. It's a similar-ish playstyle to Heimerdinger, but you're more of a control mage and less of just a massive lane bully. So one thing about the champion is that you can look to move around the map a little bit and move with your jungler. After level 3, you do have good lane priority, being able to push your lane. For the high elo mid lane list, Twisted Fate and Kassadin are going to be your most dominant, up there with Katarina. One thing about Kassadin, although the AP ratio on Fleet Footwork was nerfed on this patch, it also means that he's not wasting stats that he doesn't want, again with the attack speed. Sorry if that sounds like a broken record, but seriously, it's a huge change a lot of people aren't considering. Being able to take 20 AP at level 1 and still go Precision Tree means that a lot of these assassins and carry mids who either wanted to take Fleet Footwork such as Kassadin or wanted just to go Triumph means that they are much more successful now. Talon and Pyke do drop down a bit. This is because people having extra armor in the early game means that Talon might need to hit level 3 before he kills you instead of level 1 or level 2. Of course, joking a bit, but also not really at the same time. So much of the reason that he's good is because he can snowball, and if people don't die as quickly to him, that is part of the reason that he falls down. On to the bottom lane list, which we might as well start calling the mage list. Truly, there is not that many good ADCs at the moment, or traditional marksmen. You still do have Draven, Lucian, Kog'Maw, Twitch a little bit here and there, and some other stuff being good. But truly, right now, this role is much better suited for mages, guys, I gotta be honest. The bar has been raised for how greedy you can play late game in bottom lane. You really don't have the time as a marksman with a weak mid game to survive. If you want to control over your own destiny, you either need to be playing mages, lane bully marksmen, or a select few bruisers. If you decide to not pick one of these 3 categories, then you will be giving up a lot of individual influence in the lane because supports are becoming stronger and other lanes have benefited much more than marksmen with the ability to optimize their stat bonuses and runes. Hewitt's pick of the week was Ezreal this time, and with Ezreal he was in a pretty bad spot for solo queue for quite a while, but with the new buffs to Kleptomancy coming in, this meant that the recent buffs to his W and R also put him in a pretty serviceable spot. He is not S tier, mind you, but at least your teammates aren't trolling when they pick him. We expect to see his performance steadily increase as players get more comfortable with him and his new play pattern, especially with his new W. He seems to favor a much more aggressive style than he ever has in the past, so try picking up an early pickaxe instead of a tier in matchups where you don't have to play passive. Honestly, you might surprise yourself with how much kill pressure in lane you have if you're able to go a bit of early AD on Ezreal. He is not that weak early game or needs 4 items to scale. He can do damage. For the high elo bot lane, Lucian and Draven become better and better as you go up. Yasuo moves down a bit as well as Twitch. Ashe becomes a more supportive and consistent ADC threat in the higher elos, and things like Kog'Maw, Sivir, Mordekaiser, Vel'Koz, and Swain will move down a bit. Kai'Sa and Vayne move up. We actually think the Kai'Sa and Vayne is weird. This one will have to be tested and we're not too sure on them because of the Rageblade changes. It seems like it'll be okay for Kai'Sa, but much worse for Vayne, due to the fact that she already does a lot of true damage. So Rageblade champions and Rageblade ADCs will have something up in the air. We'll have to see how this one plans out over the patch, so keep in mind and keep maybe a little asterisk on those 2 ones. Alright, moving on to support. Mage supports are going to be the best up there with Sona, and we do see Lux, Vel'Koz, Nami, Xerath, and Bard doing pretty well in A tier. Blitzcrank, Maokai, Soraka doing well, Fiddlesticks, Veigar. Pyke is okay as a support and is B tier. Honestly, he's probably better mid and top at the moment, but he still can work support. Janna is a champion that is doing better and better. Some of the rune changes are good for her. Actually, she's one of the few champions that makes the new Celerity seem pretty good. If you know anything about Celerity, there was a post on Reddit and somebody did the math. Celerity is now like statistically and mathematically the worst rune in the game. It was nerfed so hard. except on Janna. It's actually pretty good on Janna. It gutted Hecarim and made him significantly weaker, but with Janna she makes Celerity be pretty good. For high elo supports, Bard becomes better and better. I actually played against a Dark Harvest Bard once it came out. It felt pretty good and oppressive. I was surprised at just how good Dark Harvest Bard was. Makes a lot of sense even despite the nerfs. Janna will go down, Leona and Alistar will come up a little bit. Nami, Lux, and Thresh are doing well in A tier, and still the mage supports. Even Sona is pretty good in S tier right now for high elo, but I would say if there's any asterisks on this list, just watch out for Sona. We'll see how good she is. I think being able to take the resistances as well as being able to take Resolve Tree is pretty good, and then in matchups where you can be more aggressive and having good lane matchups, you can go full 20 AP. If you remember back in the day, do you remember like Season 6 Sona that was impossible to lane against and did so much damage with full AP runes? Yeah, that might come back. We'll have to see how that one works. Anyway, this has been the Mobalytics patch 8.23 video tier list. It's the preseason. Go out there, try some stuff, and please on this one, let us know what you think of this in the comment section down below, as well as any new champions you've played. Give us all kinds of feedback on new champions.